Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at Earth and Sky. If you haven't already, please hit the like button on our Facebook page. Hit the subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you find our videos interesting at all, share them out with your friends. We love to see when you share them. We love hearing your comments and seeing those likes and loves on the video as well. And today we're going to be talking about healing religious trauma. There are a lot of people out there who have a lot of different forms of religious trauma, where maybe they were raised in a church and they had gone to a certain religion for a long time. It happens with all religions. And then they get so turned off in certain ways that they just kind of turn their back on the church and they really lose interest. And sometimes it gets, quite frequently for people that I've encountered, gets to the point where words trigger people too. So if somebody hears the God word, then that's a trigger of, oh, I stay away from the religious or Jesus or any of those words. It can be this like chill sometimes that comes up within people, because it's not about the spirituality, it's not about the love concept that was originally at the heart of the message. It's about the power and the control and the fire and brimstone and revengeful but wrathful God that has kind of through religion come forth. And that's not really the basis of the spirituality. That's not the basis of the cosmic or the origin or, what we come from. It's not the basis of the source. But man has made all of these changes over time that have turned the concept into this wrathful, mean, angry father figure that can really seem like it does harm to a lot of people. And so people tend to turn their back on it. And so many people, it seems all around the world, whether they're Christian or Catholic or any variety of religions, that seems to be the most that I run into, get this, what's considered religious trauma. And so what do you do if you are in that spot? How do you heal it? Do you need to heal it? You might feel like you don't need to heal it, that you're just fine and you turned your back and you have no interest. And that might be where you're at. I know I had been in that place for a while. And then I had realized that if you turn your back on it and you just realize that you don't really want to address it and you just ignore it, then you actually have a block within yourself. Because anything in life that triggers you, that kind of draws up this emotion and creates an aversion within you, is then a block. That's one of those things with relationships even. You'll know when you're done with a relationship because you won't have all those triggers that are emotionally going up within you when you hear about your loved one or you think about them. Instead, you'll just feel neutral and you'll know it's done. So if you feel like you have all of those emotional triggers, or the hairs on your arms stand up, or you just want to leave the conversation if somebody starts using any of those religious dogma words, then you might want to look into seeing if there's some trauma maybe you want to heal. It doesn't mean you have to go into any specific religion whatsoever. That's not the point of it at all. It's just how can you heal this wound within you that causes hard feelings every time it's brought up. When I had had it brought up to me, it was interesting. I was in a Holy Fire Karuna Reiki class, but we'll get to that in a minute. There's a few things that have led up to that. But how can you and one of the concepts that I've heard a lot of people talk about is how could an entity that's created out of love and who teaches not to hate and not to be vengeful, then turn around and be so wrathful and vengeful and be a father figure and turn its back on its children? That doesn't seem like the actual concept of the God that is originally having the intent within the Bible. I don't believe. I think that I know there have been many, many wars that have been waged in the name of religion. The Christian Crusades were some of the most brutal. So many thousands of people were killed in the name of the Christian God. And we've seen this played in history with many different religions where wars are started and political people end up rising up and patriarchies rise up into great power because they try to harness and control people through what their interpretation of the Bible is, and through trying to say, if you don't do this, you might risk eternal damnation. And how scary is that? So people will turn and they'll migrate, and they from many, many eons ago, where they started doing it with a lot of the pagans, and they would find ways to incorporate their holidays, but yet turn them into Christian holidays and change a lot of the meaning. And then as time goes on, those patriarchies that rise in power wash out what they don't want and put in their own message, which tends to be very, very controlling at the heart of it. And yet the message that we're taught at the core of all of it is to love. So how does that fit when you're looking at the power and the control aspects of this? Religious constructs really have been created specifically for power and for control, and those huge patriarchies that we've seen rise up. Yet spirituality is within the heart. It's within your soul. It's within who you are. It's within your relationship to the divine, and whatever you want to call the divine, whatever relationship that is, however you see it, that's the spirituality that's within you, and that's at the heart of how you can bridge your own connection to God. There's no reason that you have to go through other people, or whether it's within a hierarchy that says that they have a greater dominion or they know the answers. It's always been within you. It's still within you, and you are connected to the divine already within yourself. So healing the religious trauma and getting to the point where maybe you aren't triggered by those words, and maybe you aren't triggered by the God that mankind has tended to create, and instead getting peace with whatever your own spirituality is within yourself might be part of the key. Religion tends to have a lot of rules and a lot of regulations and the hierarchy, yet the spirituality just blooms within your heart, within your mind, within your soul. So if you feel like you're getting caught up on some of those concepts or some of those words, just draw yourself back to the heart of the matter and the fact that it is within you, that you and the divine are one, however you want to see that relationship. And that said, I think sometimes people develop religious trauma, which can really block your spirituality if it isn't dealt with and healed. And so a lot of times people don't realize how those blocks come in. So I mentioned that I had discovered that through the Holy Fire Karuna class. When I was younger, I've always had a psychic ability since I was as young as I know. My mother had specifically known that I was psychic from the age of 2. And then I saw my first guardian angel when I was 12. I had been sitting on the edge of my bed and was planning to kill myself, and saw her behind me and had my first conversation with my angel. And then, when I was younger, I had actually memorized one of the books of the Bible. I had gone to church. I'd also celebrated witchcraft in a positive light. I'd explored a lot of different things, and yet I always had these questions inside myself, some of the things that didn't make sense, and one of those being, how can some entity create life and then feel like it wants to play chess and say, if you don't follow these specific rules or these commandments, then you're going to be damned forever? That just absolutely doesn't make sense. And I think people lose sight of not knowing how long eternity is and how much love really is out there within the universe. And so I had a lot of questions that I mulled over and that I meditated on from an early age, and still meditate on some of that. I'd also had some near-death experiences, and my near-death experiences definitely showed me that the type of God that's in the Bible is not the type of God that I saw when I had died, and the source of love that I went to was just overwhelming and incredible. The white light that is just full of such radiant peace and such joy and such beauty as soon as I crossed over each time is just an amazing thing. I look forward to going back when it's my time, but not trying to rush it now either. And so astral travel, the same thing. When you astral travel, you can go up into these higher realms, and you start to see, when you look down on Earth and you see how tiny this little blue marble is that we all live on, and the fact that the rules and regulations that mankind tries to restrict on things, how small those are when you see that everybody truly is connected. All life truly is connected. Animals, people, plants, everything is connected. The divine, angels, spirit, all of those realms are also all definitely connected right in with us. And the thing that connects all of us is this source of love. And that's that first thing that we go to when we cross over to the other side, is this amazing cosmic light of love. And some could call that light God, some could call the light goddess, some could call it divine creation, whatever word you want to put to it. But if you start finding that you're limiting yourself in certain words, like God, trigger you and make you want to run the other way, then that's probably, again, a sign that that religious trauma is there. And maybe there are some ways to heal that within yourself so that you can remember that that spirituality is within you and it has nothing to do with the religious dogma that's out there. And so, let's see. I started really discovering my own spirituality, really rooted in love and that source of pure love. And I started really connecting a lot with the angels. I loved angels, but I started really disconnecting from that word God and disconnecting from anything that kind of resembled what's in the Bible, because it triggered all of those angry emotions that I really just don't feel like they are in the source of it at all. So I started switching over to the goddess religions and celebrating the different goddess archetypes and bringing in that feminine aspect instead. And it felt like that really resonated with me a lot. And when I would talk to people, I would let them know it's all the same thing. If you see it as God, that's fine for you. If somebody wants to see it as a goddess, which was what I was doing, that's fine. Truly, it's all one and the same on the other side. The words don't matter when we're on the other side. The words are just a human construct that we've found to try and use language to relate to each other. But when you get above the words and you just see the concept, then you start to come into that where you can start really embracing the essence of love. My husband sometimes would ask me, he's like, well, you can tell me about all the hierarchy of the angels and these different levels and the dominions and all of that, but what's above the angels? And I kept telling him, nothing really, just love. And he would say, well, I think there's something. I said, nope. Just love, that's it. What's next? And I didn't want to even broach the concept of some other consciousness that was above it, because that's the level I was comfortable with, and that was it. And so, and it's true that it is love, that is the concept, but there's a consciousness that's above that as well. There's a consciousness that we evolve to as well. I often have talked about seeing it as this bright white light, the source, the God source, that is this bright white light. And as we reincarnate down here, it's like we are fingers that spindle off of this beautiful white light, and we come down to the marble planet and interact with each other, and then we go back up into the white light and get absorbed into the love, and then we'll come back when we're ready. And sometimes we'll split off into different forms. Sometimes we'll maintain most of our soul together. Sometimes we'll split off with a twin flame. It can vary quite a bit because we're all energy in that realm, and we're all love in that pure realm. And so I'd often talk to people about, the words don't matter. So use the words that resonate with you. But it was so interesting in this Holy Fire Karuna class, Holy Fire 2 Karuna class, was that when I started reading the book and I started seeing the word God was in there a lot, and Jesus and Holy Spirit was in there a lot. And it really was triggering me. And it was interesting because before that, even with the PhD program that I'm going through, they use the word God a lot. In the first several chapters of my PhD program, I was rewriting each of the meditations because I wanted to have nothing to do with the word God or Jesus or anything like that. Took a few extra hours, but hey, I was comfortable then. And then I started to release that. I was like, okay, if I say the words don't matter, they don't matter. It's the same concept. Why is this triggering me? So very, very frustrating when I saw that in the Holy Fire 2 class. But then I read this chapter in it that talked about healing religious trauma and how that's also part of the Holy Fire Karuna Reiki. And so when I started to go to the class, and I'd already been pondering this concept in the patriarchal God and how to rise above that, yet be okay with the fact they're probably going to use that word a lot. And so it was fascinating that when I did it was an exercise that we did in the Reiki class, and all of a sudden I had this peace that came over me, and I just felt in an instant like that, the religious trauma was healed. And I had the realization, it's like it clicked suddenly, that the words really don't matter. And I can now call the source God, or instead of just goddess, and they're one and the same, and it doesn't trigger me like it did. I remember the relationship that I had before with Jesus and with doing healings, because Jesus was a master healer. I don't know that I agree with the definition of him in the Bible. I don't know that I agree with all of that, but I think there are certain lessons that we can bridge from it, and certainly he was a master healer. So again, I'm working with him doing healings, and it was just so fascinating the speed with which that trauma can be healed, and going from not feeling like I had anything wrong with having that block to realizing, oh, maybe I do need to clear it, because if you're triggered by something, there's probably a block, and if you have a block that's blocking you from using the term God, then you have a block that's disconnecting you from the creator, the universe, or whatever you want to do to release all of your power and bring full power into you. To really merge with that source, you have to release any blocks that are in the way. And so it was fascinating to see that just get completely healed in an instant. And I think a big part of that was realizing that it's time to rise above those words and to see the concept and to let go of what man has attached to all of it, and let go of all of that scare tactic, that the condemnation and scare tactic that man has attached. And it was interesting too. I was talking with William Rand. He's the lead person, the start of the International Reiki Center, and a huge researcher in Reiki. He's traveled all over the world multiple times to bring all the information together for everyone. And I was talking to him about it, and about in that realm where we are working in the third heaven energy, in that God energy. And I talked to him about different goddesses and the gods, and he said he absolutely believes as well in the Roman and the Egyptian gods and goddesses, yet they are in the same category as the wrathful God, because if you look at the stories, the ego part of the stories, the archetypes of each of the gods and goddesses, they have a lot of human traits. Well, if you're in that true source, what we would call the third heaven source, where everything is pure light and pure love, then you're above all of that ego and all of that archetype and all of the back and forth and squabbling and rules and this can and this can't and all of that. You rise above that. So the wrathful God is in that same second heaven energy with all of the other God and goddess archetypes. But when I was doing this technique and I healed the religious trauma and I started drawing in more healing light, I started to realize I was in the third heaven, and I actually saw a space where the gods and the goddesses would come in, but it was above their archetype stories. So it was their third heaven. It was as though like their highest self. We talk about our highest self a lot of times. So it was their highest self energy. So you can still work with them in that essence, but it's above any of those human stories, just like the true essence of God is above any of that human emotion, above wrath, above anger, above fear, above condemnation or judgment or anything like that. That's all second heaven energy, which really has nothing to do with God or goddess or source or universe. Any of that has nothing to do with that. That's all second heaven and first heaven energy. First heaven is the planet that we are on. It's the life that has a physical body. Second heaven is all still kind of mixed up in the ego. It's kind of trying to ascend, but still has a lot of issues. Third heaven is where it's all pure love and pure radiant energy, pure potentiality. And so if you can start to heal that religious trauma within yourself, recognize that, let yourself go straight up into the third heaven energy where there is no judgment, there is no criticism. You realize that you can completely set your ego aside. It has no place within this life, and when you set your ego aside, you'll realize that you can move so much farther ahead in life. You can be so much happier in life. And so that's that God essence energy. And so I hope that can help you. It's been an interesting series of events to pull me to that point. Even the concept of when I became a minister, it was a very interesting concept because a lot of that religious stuff triggered me so much. So when I knew the universe was pulling me to become a minister, it was just a very interesting journey to recognize that it would be what I make of it. And love is the message behind what I say. But through the journey in healing myself, recognizing I can bring God into it, and it's not a big deal, you know, and hoping that you can start to heal that within yourself as well. Meditation can really help, and just realizing that setting aside all of the ego is really truly the biggest thing with that. So we will be talking later about the different heavens. We'll do a different life talk on that with all the elements of the first heaven, the second heaven, and the third heaven energy, and how you can utilize that within your own life to bring in your pure potentiality, your full love, and really radiate that joy of the third heaven. I hope these life talks bring some meaning to you, and I hope you have a fantastic week. If you haven't already, please like this video and share it out with your friends. Like our Facebook page and subscribe to us on YouTube. Thank you. Have a great day.